On today's show, we wind the clock back to 2010 and look back on highlights from that year's V8 Touring Car Series, supporting the Shannons Motorsports Australia Championships. We take a look at all the action from round 3 at Winton Motor Raceway, round 4 from Sydney Motorsport Park, and the final round from Sandown Raceway. Then we wind forward to 2011 and look back on some of the four-wheeled off-road action from the Motorsport Australia Off-Road Championship. We feature highlights from round 2, the Tats Fink Desert Race in Alice Springs, and round 3, the Flinders 450. This is Speedweek.
Well, the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series might have struggled for numbers in the first 2 rounds, but here at Winton Motor Raceway, it's gone crazy. A record field of 14 cars, plenty of new stars and new cars on the racetrack as well, set to make this weekend very exciting. We sent Julie Nemi down to pit lane to catch up with Series Director Rob Kirkpatrick.
Well, Rob, we've more than doubled the field for the V8 Touring Cars this weekend. Surely that took a bit of horsepower to organise.
It did. A lot of effort's gone into developing the V8 Touring Car category, and it's now a very important part of the Shannons Nationals. So, from 6 cars at Mallala to 14 at Winton, it's terrific.
What was behind the push?
Just a lot of work, and the competitors got behind it, encouraged other people that they knew that had cars and said to bring them out, and it's all come to what we were hoping. It was planned that there'd be probably 12 cars at Winton, but to get 14 is fantastic.
It's extraordinary to watch.
It's great, and it sounds good.
Well, it sure does sound good, there's no doubt about it, as we take a look at highlights from race 2 of the weekend, round 3 of the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. Early in the race, there was a battle of the AU Falcons. Shepherd in the Image Racing Warby Lodge number 50 holding off John Vigotis. Under some pressure, Chris Smurden making the debut of his ex-Stone Brothers car, got passed by Ben Eggleston in the big number 38. Some dramas for Teb though in his VY Commodore, couldn't even make it back to the garage. Such was the extent of the damage. Matt Hansen and Lee Moran had a massive stoush. Unfortunately, for Lee Moran especially, it did not end well. A massive crash at turn 4 after a hip and shoulder with the later model Falcon resulted in a massive impact into the wall, and that brought out the safety car. You see it from all angles. Crunch, big hit there with Hansen, and Moran ended up parked against the barrier, and it took some time to extract him from a very beat up EL Falcon. In the end, there was a 1-lap sprint to the flag, and right in the thick of the action was Ben Eggleston. He was coming under pressure from Chris Smurden down into the final corner, the very end of the last lap. Smurden got through with just a little bit of panel rubbing, and Terry Wyhoon tried to do the same thing into the very last corner. Didn't work well for Eggleston though, but after just 2 races in the category, Dean Neville found himself greeting the checkered flag first. Tony Evangelou came home in a solid second, Smurden was third, Wyhoon fourth, Eggleston nowhere to be seen in the top 8.
We got out in front. I don't know what was happening behind me. It must have been Dyson back in the background and left me alone, so it was great.
You had the safety car up until the final lap, and then you had to make that dash home. Were you worried about behind you?
Yeah, I was worried about what was supposed to happen in the safety car because no one's ever told me, so that was my first time behind the safety car.
Well, the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series, as we've seen, has been kicking goals this weekend. Biggest field in series history. 14 cars started the weekend. A little bit of attrition so far, but this final race should be an absolute cracker. Krause and Wado with you today for the final race here at Winton Motor Raceway. Dean Neville will go from pole position thanks to his race 2 victory. Tony Evangelou from the outside of the front row, the series leader. Chris Smurden and Terry Wyhoon next.
Quality field, no doubt about it. Some good cars too, red lights on. The folks at Winton very proud of their lighting system. It does work extremely well. Evangelou off to a good start. Likewise, Neville's will come down to turn 1, door to door. Oh, just getting the whole shot into 1.
Tony Evangelou through, he leads them. Dean Neville, the kit home car, in second place, and Chris Smurden in his brand new ex-Stone Brothers racing car, holding on in third place, putting the pressure, Terry Wyhoon. There's Chris Delsma making his debut in the Century 21 Hazelbrook entry.
Oh, good shot down low of Wyhoon, the Image Racing car. Right down on tarmac level we are. Oh, and that just shows you how easy it is.
Cold tyres. He's dropped it at turn 5, which is a very high-speed part of this racetrack, and he's got a long way off.
Sorry, Terry Wyhoon, but thanks for the pictures. That was tremendous.
He's gone halfway back to Melbourne down the Hume Highway there.
Rowdy Barsh sideways off the turn in the second of the Chris Smurden cars.
Shepherd running fourth under pressure from John Vigotis. Great to have JV back in the field. So battle groups right throughout the pack now. Great to have a bigger field here this weekend. This series really starting to flourish. Izzy Ambrosio there in the ex-Perkins Motorsport car. Ben Eggleston.
Johnny V.
Yeah, side by side with Vigotis.
Oh, well done. Eggleston did very well out of that. He really wasn't in an offensive position. I thought the JCV car might have had a better run. Coming off the corner, Johnny comes back at him though.
I wish we could see what number Eggleston was. It's just a bit hard to see. that big 38 on the side gets in the way. But this series really starting to go well. Shannons have stuck with it as two of Kumo tyres as we go on board with Izzy Ambrosio in the car that he's sharing with Dean Kovacevic this season. Up the inside. Down into turn one, the ex-Perkins Motorsports Commodore.
Jeez.
Here's some history. This was the last car Larry Perkins raced and the first V8 supercar Jack Perkins raced.
Wow.
So there you go.
Jeez, it's obviously very good under brake still. That was a massive run. He just made up his mind. We are going in. I like Chris Smurden's car this year. Very sharp looking colours. Very different to the old Caltex Haviland colours he raced that car in for the greater majority of the first couple of years in this category.
Yeah, and the first two rounds of this year and had a pretty good run, including a front row start at Malala. This is his first run in the ex-Stone Brothers racing car, still running that livery made famous by James Courtney. And it's been a big learning curve for Smirdo this weekend in the new car. It's a very, very different animal to the car he's used to, but there's no doubt that as the series goes on, he'll be very, very competitive. But it's great to see people buying new cars for this category and getting right behind it. Tony Evangeli was only going to do 1 or 2 rounds this year, but found out that he was rather quite competitive, thank you very much. And he's going on with it.
Funny that, isn't it? Neville still charging hard. He's in that second spot. Smurdo really starting to come after him. Great day for racing here at Winton. You can't afford to get off the racetrack. We just saw that quite graphically with Terry Wyhoon when he got off. Chris Delsma, though, the Century 21 guy, doing a pretty handy job in a very smart-looking car. We spoke to him earlier.
Mine's the last AU supercar ever built, I believe. It's a very strong car. It's not lacking any horsepower out of there. I can tell you, I'm keeping up with everyone. It's the first time in the car this weekend, but I'm happy to be mid-pack. It's beyond expectation, actually. You can't put it into words, you can't prepare yourself for it. You just got to get in and do it.
Yeah, huge step up from the production cars that he's been racing in the past, running around in a GT Falcon. So this is a completely different animal. But Warren Davis from Howard Racing, the boss of Howard Racing, has been here this weekend as part of the handover for this car and doing a really good job helping Chris come to grips with it. We're on board with Terry Wyhoon, though. The Image Racing Falcon coming back through the field. So you can see Terry right on the back of this battle pack that includes John Vigotis, who's been assisting with the preparation of the Century 21 car. So I guess you could call them teammates. Good looking car, the 21, and a big learning curve for Chris Delsma. Wyhoon, though, right on the back of this battle pack. Barch gives him racing room. Side by side into the last corner. Nice move for Wyhoon. Sized him up over the last half of that lap and then just got the job done. And Terry Wyhoon continues to pick them up in the Lubrimax entry. Big lock up, the Kumo tyre down into turn one. But Terry, what a great supporter of this category for some time, an ex-Larkin Motorsport car, chasing down the last of the AU Falcons built, and got past Rowdy Barch from the beautiful Barossa Valley from Tanunda, the proprietor of Barch Builders. Runs on a very shoestring budget, but does a great job. Former V8 Ute competitor, but tearing up an inside front Kumo as we go on board with Izzy Ambrosio. The SA Tractors VY Commodore, the ex-Perkins Motorsport car. So Izzy Ambrosio just in front of this battle pack in the ex-Perkins Motorsport Jack Daniels Racing Commodore. Car driven by Larry Perkins, Paul Dumbrell, Jack Perkins finished third at Bathurst with PD behind the wheel. Very handy race car indeed, driven by Dean Kovacevic, who co-owns the car with Ambrosio at Malala Raceway, so they'll be sharing that for the remainder of this year's V8 Touring Car National Series. With thanks, of course, to Shannons. Up the inside goes Terry Wahoon in the meantime, continues the comeback drive and gets through on Chris Delsma. Making up time after that massive off early in the race, right there at turn 5. That long sweeper, one of the more difficult corners in the sport. We've got two apexes and they carry a lot of speed, bouncing over the curb into turn 7, the right-hander, and then down through the complex. Meanwhile, closing in, Dean Neville under pressure from Chris Smurden. Neville had a fantastic run in race 2, was under all sorts of pressure from our race leader Tony Evangelou, but managed to hold on, set a series of very quick laps and won the race, looking for support to continue the year, but showing how competitive will be in that Kid Home Falcon. There goes Terry Wahoon around the outside of John Vagonis, grabs a break into 1 but manages to pull it up okay. So Terry power sliding that car, laying 600 horsepower to the ground, working the Kumo tyres hard. Terry has had an up and down season, really sharing the honours this year with Tony Evangelou. It's been a great battle between those two, but this is the first weekend where the Victorian hasn't been right up with our race leader. He's been forced to battle very hard, and I think that shows the increasing depth in the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. Lead the points coming into the round by just a handful over Evangelou, with Smurden back in 3rd place. We go back on board with Ambrosio in the Commodore. Just grabs 5th gear before the right-hander through the 6-speed Hollinger gearbox, pumping out 600 brake horsepower, 5-litre V8s. The only major changes to these cars are a control Shannons V8 Touring Car ECU, the engine control unit, and a control rear wing element. But aside from that, these are full-blooded V8 touring cars. We're riding with Terry Wahoon, a man very much on a mission because he had a massive off at the start of this Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series race. He's now on the comeback trail and he's got a very good run out of the left-hander on Izzy Ambrosio. They're side by side and Wahoon should get that position pretty nicely there. Grabs a break, grabs another break. He's run off again. Whoa, big puddle. Very, very wet here on Friday at Winton, and Wahoon is proving that. Cannot stop the car. And trying to get the thing out. Here it is. Have a listen. Nothing but mud on the front splitter of the BA Falcon. And very lucky not to do more damage than what it looks like he has. Bouncing through there and just had no control when he was out in the grass. So the comeback drive really ends there for Terry Wahoon. What a bit of blow from a great drive from the back of the field after throwing it off on the opening lap on cold tyres. Here's our leader, Tony Evangelou, leading Dean Neville. Evangelou set to take the lead in the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. Neville, first drive in a V8 since Bathurst 2008. So to come back and run Tony right to the wire in this race has been a mighty, mighty drive. Looking to continue this form in later rounds of the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. Don't forget, for all the action from the Shannons Nationals, head to thenationals.com.au on your internet browser and get all the action, the photos and the highlights from Shannons Nationals rounds, including the Australian 6-hour at Eastern Creek coming up this July. Well, Tony Evangelou has had a very good weekend. He won race 1 at a canter. He finished 2nd in race 2 and put the pressure on Neville the whole way. He's got a big margin on his series rival for 2010, Terry Wahoon, and he's about to cap it off in style. Tony Evangelou gets the applause from pit lane, gets the checkered flag from the man on the stand and takes out race 3 and round 3 of the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series here at Winton. Dean Neville was second, Smurden third, ahead of Eggleston, the first of the Holdens, with Shepherd, Ambrosio, Vigotis and Delsma completing the top 8.
Always said if if Dean gets in front, we're going to be in trouble. So yeah, a bit more grip on the race line. Sometimes better starting off on the second grid. Got a good start, put our head down and just finish the race off. Was really good.
Yeah, there's a few minor tweaks with the shocks with the high and low speed, but I reckon the third race was the problem was we started on the dirty line. I think the outside, the second position is a better place to start.
Third. Every time I come out, I'm coming third, and I've progressed slightly in the championship, so I'm much happy about that. But yeah, look, the new car, it's a fantastic car. It's a car that Courtney ran back in the early days, and then Carl Reiner, I think, ran it in a couple of the Fujitsu rounds. I'm not sure how he did it. I haven't actually tracked the history, but for me, look, new car, wonderful car, but it'll take, I think, probably a couple of meetings to come to grips with it.
Well, he's got time up his sleeve, Chris Smurden, plenty of racing to go in the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. The top of the table, though, looking interesting. Tony Evangelou pulling a margin over Chris Smurden, with Waihoon back to third place, and Dean Neville with a bullet jumping to fourth. So some happy people at the end of a very competitive weekend, but you get the feeling this is just the beginning for the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. Gearing up for a series that's rapidly gaining momentum, the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. It's round 4 of 5. There's a title on the line, and Tony Evangelou's looking pretty good after the first 4 rounds. He's got a reasonably handy buffer over the remainder of the field, but a good grid set for Eastern Creek Raceway this weekend as they set to do battle. Highlights now of race 2. Crail and Henshelwood with you, and a slow start, Sean, for Tony Evangelou from the front row of the grid, ended up right at the very back of the field.
It's almost as if he's trying to make it difficult for himself in winning a championship. He's got a nice lead coming into this round, and of course his main title contenders, Chris Smurden and Terry Waihoon, aren't here. So it's a good chance to take serious round points, but not from the back of the pack, not when you've got guys like Sam Walter in the field.
Yeah, and Scott Loadsman, who's doing an awesome job in the ex-Paul Morris Motorsport, ex-Sirame Racing VZ Commodore, led the way, but Walter quickly got past. A great fight between the two Commodores. This has been a series where the Fords have been dominant for many rounds, so it was good to see the GM product back at the front of the field.
Tony Evangelou forcing his way through. New paint this weekend. He doesn't need to be doing little things like that. Steve Voigt copped a bit of a tap, turned him around in the Sydney Star Racing entry.
Yeah, the former Gary Rogers Motorsport car, Matt Hansen, making grounds with the number 5 AU Falcon. Unfortunately for Dean Kovacevic, he pointed the wrong way exiting turn 2. There were more dramas too. Chris Delsma, the Century 21 Hazelbrook car, dropping it off the racetrack round the back of Corporate Hill.
Matt Hansen coming under fire from Chris Delsma. Hansen a little bit of a wiggle there, coming out of a corner that Mark Scape and Russell Ingall made famous some years ago.
A lot of a wiggle for Voigt, who spun at turn 2, and again Hansen right in the thick of the action in the 5 car. Out in front though, Walter making his debut in the category in the Commodore was uncatchable and became the second different winner from 2 races this round. Got the checkered flag and won his first Shannons V8 Touring Car Series race.
Scott Loadsman coming across the line in second, and a great recovery there from Tony Evangelou to take third.
Yeah, good drive from the series leader to come through to finish on the podium. Vigotis was 4th, Mark Shepherd 5th, Dels was 6th, Aaron Tebb in 7th, and despite some dramas, Matt Hansen rounded out the top 8.
Shannons V8 touring cars this weekend. Not a bad start.
No, it was good. No, yesterday it was hampered all day by fuel pressure problems, and we battled to get a time out of it. Fixed it overnight, and we had to start off last because of our we didn't get to finish the first race. So yeah, it hooked up at the start, and just a few years of experience and head down, and some good tyres worked well.
Race 3, it's the name of the game. Walter from pole, Loadsman from second, a Holden front row, a couple of forwards on row 2 with Tony Evangelou and John Vigotis. He's having a very good weekend in the ex-FTR Falcon. Away we go. Good start from Walter on the inside. Slow start from Chris Delsma. Kovacevic was off like a rocket from the rear of the field.
Plenty of wheel spin there for Aaron Tebb, having one of his very early runs in the Shannons Touring Car Series in the ex-Gary Rogers VY Commodore, but it's all Sam Walter coming down to turn 1. Nice dive up the inside by Tony Evangelou.
Yeah, well, the competition's been a bit stiffer this weekend for the series leader. He's had to contend with the man leading the race at the moment, Walter, and Scott Loadsman, who's been sensational on debut. First car race for 2 years, and he's driving the car that Steve Owen took in Tintercar livery, you might remember, to the Fujitsu V8 Supercar Series title a few years ago.
It's nice for a guy to step back from being a team manager into the driver's role. Of course, that was the way he planned to start these things. I don't know that he actually had planned too far into the future with Steve Owen as a driver, but as it turned out, it was a great combination. They won that championship. Steve Owen's gone on to other things, but to put Scott back into the car and be so competitive first time out, that'd have to make you very happy.
So Walter on the opening lap going very nicely. Vigotis on the defensive from Teb, and not so much on the defensive is Kovacevic. He's got passed by Chris Delsma. The AU Falcon gets the job done, and Kovacevic lays 2 big black strips of rubber, the Kumo tyres, on the exit of turn 9 as he smokes the ex-Larry Perkins Jack Daniels Commodore up. Brand new engine in that car this weekend. They've got a new transporter doing things very seriously. The Shannons V8 Touring Car Series.
And of course, it's taken a little while for this to come on, Richard Crail. The series has been going for a couple of years. There's been some solid support from the likes of this guy, John Vigotis, and Terry Wyhoon, and a number of others who have made up the core of this particular category. But this weekend, it was fantastic to see the weekend start with 14 entries. It's really coming on very, very nicely.
Yeah, and they had 14 at Winton in the previous round as well, which was great to see. And this series, I think, from here on in, will just continue to grow. If they can get somewhere up around the 18 car mark, it's going to be very, very competitive indeed. Not that it isn't already, because we've got some great dicers throughout the field. It's great to see John Vigotis back. He's in the ex-Glen Seaton for Tickford Racing AU Falcon. The man from the Blue Mountains normally races with the help of only his wife as a pit crew, but he's actually got some crew this weekend, which is amazing. And he's had some data logging for the first time. So he's unlocking some secrets in that car and continually going faster.
Well, it's giving him an extra edge, and it's showing this weekend. He's very quick. He's just off the tail of these 3 leading cars. The guys that are well versed and well experienced in touring car competition. And talking about new cars into the field, that Sam Walter car, an ex-development series car, has been sold as of this weekend.
Yeah, so go racing, win some races, and people get interested in buying your cars. It's funny how that works, isn't it?
And of course, the name of the entry you were telling me was somebody who's very well versed, of course, in the Shannons National Series.
Yeah, and in production car racing. I'm sure they'll announce that in due course. So looking forward to a new competitor possibly joining the ranks of the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. 3rd, 4th and 5th places in this race at the moment. Fighting it out, just taking on to the back of this grid is Stephen Voigt in the Gary Rogers Motorsport car, GRM 06, that chassis, driven by Garth Tander, Cam McConville, amongst others. Very competitive car in V8 supercar terms as we look at Chris Delsma putting the pressure on the Warby Lodge number 50 car of Mark Shepherd, the ex-SBR Marcus Ambrose AU Falcon.
Strong heritage right through this field, and it's nice to see them in such competitive form. Of course, the ex-Jack Daniels VY there, that's had a great history with the Larry Perkins team. It's nice to see it looking so racy this weekend, Richard. Be nice to see it move its way further forward in the field, but I'm sure the guys are going to get to that stage where they can actually learn that. Chris Delsma up the inside of Mark Shepherd. Not a bad move. A little bit of rubbing as he goes through the door, but that's one of the hallmarks of touring car competition. Rubbing's racing, as they say.
Yeah, and for Kovacevic, he was disappointed. He lost out in a collision with a bit of friendly contact, I guess, with Chris Delsma in race 1, and bent a control arm on the 22 VZ Commodore, so he was unable to finish that race, but very impressed with their development they've been making, getting closer and closer to the front of the field. Really impressed with racing on the East Coast. They reckon the facilities over here are pretty good compared to what they used to back home in WA.
You hear a lot of that from the guys that come from the West. It's a big country, of course, and it's a different style of racing. But it's nice to see guys that are new to motorsport per se coming into a category like this. Beautiful onboard vision from Sam Walter, but that doesn't look like he's actually heading down pit lane, Richard Crail.
No, on the pit lane limiter, and I'd suggest this might be a drive-through penalty.
There was a little bit of rolling off the start. I wonder whether that's actually caught him out somewhere along the line.
so there's no indication of stopping. He'll go in one end, out the other. And for Walter, right at the top, he's got dramas up through the gears in the Commodore. ECU that is limited to 7,000 RPM and a control rear wing element, as well as the Kumo control tyre that's been very durable, very successful. And they're the regulations that introduce some cost effectiveness into this category and has slowly but surely allowed it to grow and develop with more cars coming on stream as the season goes on.
Of course, that Walter car was upgraded. It started its life as a VY, I think, Richard, and upgraded to a VZ, but that's not the specification that the Touring Car Series run. Of course, VZ still runs in the development series in the V8 Touring Car Championships, or the V8 Supercar Championships rather, but they've converted it back to a VY this weekend to make it race ready for the Shannons Touring Car Series, and shown that hasn't lost much of its edge.
Well, if they've got a sale out of it too, worth doing.
Very much worth doing.
Now, you might be wondering where Chris Smurden is. Unfortunately, they had some electronic glitches on that car early in the weekend that forced them to park the ex-James Courtney BA Falcon to the side of the racetrack, so watch out for Smurdo at the final round at Sandown Raceway, which is looking like a gangbuster race meeting. It is going to be huge. Don't forget the nationals.com.au is the official website of the Shannons Nationals Motor Racing Championships, where you can find more information about all these categories and what's set to be a massive weekend down there, one of the great circuits in Australian motorsport. Meanwhile, coming under pressure, Tony Evangelou, and this is for the race lead.
Scott Loadsman's got the bit between the teeth. He's really fired up. He's really hauled in the Tony Evangelou car. He's got that rear wing in his sights. He wants to get past that car and take a race win.
Back on board with Walter after his trip through pit lane. He's a little bit further back down the field.
Of course, Sam has plenty of experience in V8 supercars, in touring cars, former development series driver. He actually ran in the Super Cheap 1000 at Bathurst last year as a privateer entry.
Did a good job of it too. Very smooth driving style. Tall guy, squeezes himself in, sits very close to the wheel. Through 11 and 12. Long radius corners here at Eastern Creek, and got to get on the gas early for this long run down the start-finish straight. Meanwhile, back at the front, Loadsman continues to pile the pressure on our race leader, Tony Evangelou, and hasn't this fallen into his hands? Looking up the inside at 4, not quite. So we've got a battle first, second, then we go back to third, fourth, with John Vagotis and Stephen Voigt dicing it out.
This is a good advertisement for data logging, Richard Cradle.
It sure is.
Boy, hasn't he come on gangbusters this weekend. And this is a guy who really loves his motorsport. He's owned this car for a number of years, campaigned it in different series that allowed touring car competition to exist prior to the Shannons Touring Car Series. And of course, when the Shannons Touring Car Series came online, John Vagotis was one of those drivers who said, thank you very much, that's exactly where I want to be. And he's loved it. He's been competitive. He's had some strong runs in past seasons, but against a little bit of limited competition. But this weekend, there's nothing limited about this competition, and to see him battling for a podium position is just what this is all about.
Yeah, and Stephen Voigt's doing a great job too. He's been out of the sport for a couple of years due to some health issues with his kidneys, and he got out of the car after race 1 and was absolutely stuffed. It was a bit of hard work for him, but I think relieved and tired at the same time. Happy to be back in the race seat. And he's doing a really good job. Voigt, who's been around motorsport for a long time and in various different categories. Seem to remember his name cropping up in sports sedans quite successfully for a couple of seasons. So he's still fighting it out as this battle for the lead continues to wage. Scott Loadsman, impressive run from this driver, another driver who spent 2 years out of the seat. It's almost as if spending time out of the hot seat is good for you at the moment, because they're running 2nd and 4th.
It's qualification to come and run at the front of the Shannons Touring Car Series. So all those guys that have got former AU Falcons, Commodores, former V8 supercars sitting in sheds, you really need to take stock of this and drag it out, dust it off, put some sponsors on the side of it and get a trackside, because this series is really starting to heat up. If you were waiting to see whether or not it was going to take or not, I think you've missed the boat. It's well and truly sailed.
Early in the weekend we had the time attack, which is a one-lap shootout for each car in the field, and it was taken out by Evangelou, but Loadsman came within literally a tenth of a second which he was over the moon about, but he said he made a mistake. I'm not used to the time attack thing. It was hard to get heat into the tyres with one warm-up lap. But Tony Evangeli got good points for being fastest in that, and he got pole position as well, 3 bonus points there. So he's building a series title victory at the moment. That's what he's doing, accumulating the points, doing what he needs to do to come out of Sandown in a month's time on top of the standings.
Sandown's another circuit like Eastern Creek, Richard Crale. It's made for these things. They really do love the circuit, and of course the annual event that's happened with supercars and V8 touring cars over many years, certainly since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, has been great. I love the Sandown events, and to see these cars go there is really going to lighten the place up.
It was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. The Model T had just been taken off the production line.
Speaking about Chris Delsmer and time attacks, he actually had a lower control arm fail during his time attack run, which is an eye-opening kind of occurrence.
And again, we're talking about guys new to this category. Chris is relatively new to it now, a former production car racer, or a continuing production car racer. He's done a great job. The car looks fantastic.
Yeah, well presented. He's got the GT Falcon, the BAGT, that he's running the Australian Manufacturers Championship. The dial before Dig Australian 6 hour at this very circuit just a few months ago, and also at the Almirall Bathurst 12 hour. They're making the step up, and he's taken to it like a duck to water, Sean. It's almost as if he was meant to drive these cars. He's been quick, consistent, smooth, and faster on every outing.
The battle's heating up again at the front, although I don't know, Richard Crale, if the outside around there is going to be the fast way through that corner.
Well, when there's a car on the inside, that's the only way he can go. He carried a lot of speed in there, Scott Loadsman. We have heard from race control, though, that he's got a penalty hanging over his head. He was showing the black flag earlier in the race for what we believe is a jump start. That flag has since been withdrawn. Now, what that means is that at the end of the race, Loadsman's going to cop a penalty. So this second place, a potential victory, might well be taken away from him. I don't think he cares, though, because he's putting the pressure on Evangeli.
I don't think his focus is the lap board or the guys with the flag right at the moment. I think his focus is on getting past that BA Falcon of Tony Evangeli. And if we have a couple more laps, that may well be the case. I think this is probably the hardest, or one of the toughest races that Tony Evangeli's had all year.
Yeah, it sure is. He's under a lot of fire. And 2 cars with a lot of history in the main game as well. Ex-Craig Lowndes, Jason Bright, car with Full Performance Racing that Evangeli's got. And of course, Tony himself raced that in a V8 supercar round at Phillip Island 2 and a bit years ago, when he filled a wild card nomination at the final round at Phillip Island in Dexion colours. Tim Slade drove the car in the Fujitsu series. And of course, ex-Paul Morris Motorsport car nicknamed Earnhardt. Sort of appropriate name. I believe this is the car that Dale Jr. tested at Queensland Raceway when he came down to visit around at Oran Park Raceway, and of course his relationship with the Cirame team and Paul Morris is long-standing. So the car with the nickname Earnhardt is putting the pressure on a car driven by Lowndes. A couple of famous surnames, Evangelo and Loadsman, working these two around the track.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Tony Evangeli started this year as a bit of a taste test to see whether or not he'd continue doing it. It was a bit of a one-off when he made his debut earlier in the season, but I think his decision to continue on is paying dividends.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly you're motivated to do more when you start winning, isn't it? So I think that's worked very, very well indeed for Tony Evangeli.
It's worked very well for the series, and again, Scott Loadsman coming into the Series 2 has been very good for it. John Vigotis here is starting to pull ahead of Steve Voigt. That's nice to see, and Chris Delsmer's starting to haul him in.
Yeah, he's closing down, Delsmer, as we start the last lap at Eastern Creek. 3.9 Ks. We go back and have a look on board with Sam Walter. He's worked his way back up to 6th place after those dramas with the drive-through in pit lane.
Definitely got the eyes on.
And dicing for position 2, Bob looks at it there. So there's a car on the outside, couldn't quite see which one it was. Nevertheless, battle for the lead continues. Penalty or not, Loadsman wants to get the flag first. And he's working over Tony Evangeli as hard as he can. Holden versus Ford in their truest sense.
Gee, they're pushing hard. You see the way it dives under brakes. Scott Loadsman is giving it one last push, getting it the power down. That's nice.
Good drive out of turn 7 through 8. And then this braking zone, more downhill than it looks, into 9. Evangelo's confident enough that he can hold his usual racing line through there. A little bit wide on the exit. That might give Loadsman a look. Just not quite enough of a look.
Coming down to the final corner, it looks like he's got it right, although Loadsman can still sort himself out with a better line to come and carry that speed off onto the front straight and get that extra legs that he needs to pull alongside and maybe take him on the line. It's going to be close.
I think it might be close, but I don't think it'll be close enough. Tony Evangelou extends his Shannons V8 Touring Car Series lead with another victory at Eastern Creek Raceway. Battle a little bit further back. Kovacevic was putting the pressure on. John Vigotis to 3rd place. Well done. A great drive. Is that Teb in the 98? I think it was. He was involved in a nice stoush. And there goes Walter across the line, recovered to 6th place. So here's the results. Vigotis was 2nd, Voigt 3rd, Delsma, Shepherd, Walter, Teb, and Kovacevic completed the top 8. 4 rounds down, 1 to go in the Shannons V8 Touring Cars, and Tony Evangelou has all but wrapped up the championship. Chris Murden 2nd, Terry Wyhoon 3rd, Shepherd, Vigotis, Hansen, Neville and Delsma in the top 8. As we get set for the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series, it's the final round of an ever-growing series. It gets better and better each time they hit the racetrack. Yeah, South Australian driver Chris Murden right in the thick of the action all season long and right at the front of the field this weekend. In fact, a great qualifying battle between himself and Tony Evangelou. The pair separated by just hundredths of a second. And in the thick of it too was Terry Wyhoon. An incredible time attack on Saturday as well for championship points was awesomely close. Race 1 highlights, the field got underway. Ian Dyke joins me in commentary today for all of the action from Sandown Shannons Nationals, and to turn 1 at least it was all pretty plain sailing.
It is a long run down to turn 1 from that start line, so it's always going to be pretty busy. A little bit wide on the exit there, bouncing over a bit of grass, and it ends badly as he sweeps across the track.
Yep, Teb and John Vigotis made heavy contact, and that brought out the safety car. And a really unfortunate incident, especially for Vigotis, who just had nowhere to go. Teb, meanwhile, limped his car back to pit lane with serious damage, while JV surveyed the damage on his battered and bruised AU Falcon. Field got back underway after a brief safety car intervention, and it was Tony Evangelou who led them through down towards turn 1. Meanwhile, Shepherd and Matt Hansen, who was in good form this weekend, having a good battle. Dice was on for 3rd, Wyhoon and Chris Murden having a fight in for 3rd place.
Yeah, there's a good part of the circuit to try and set yourself up with a run onto the back straight. Vero, and it ends badly. As I said, run onto the back straight. He mounts the curb on the exit of that corner, as we saw, and spears the Armco on the inside.
Yeah, really pounded the Armco there, Chris Murden. A lot of damage to the front of that ex-James Courtney Stone Brothers Racing BA Falcon. And that left this man, Terry Wyhoon, alone and safe in 2nd place.
Using all the road out onto the front straight. Aims for the finish line on the final lap.
Speaking of final laps, it was for Tony Evangelou. Showed the field a clean pair of heels this time out and took out race 1 of the Shannons V8 Touring Cars. A dramatic, action-packed affair in the morning sun at Sandown Raceway. This is how they lined up. Evangelou, Wyhoon, Voigt, he's going well this weekend in the Sydney Star Racing Commodore. Matt Hansen likewise having a good run. Mark Shepherd, Fennell, Ambrosio, and Vigotis goes from P8. The race got underway with Voigt on the front row, but a good start, Ian Dyke, from Terry Wyhoon.
Brilliant start as he leads the field down. We saw everyone make their way into the first corner reasonably cleanly, and it's a bumpy bit of road on the approach there, so occasionally causes a bit of a mishap, but they all made it through line astern. And he had a bit of a look down towards Dandenong Road, but stayed behind for that particular lap.
Yeah, discretion the better part of Valor there. Evangelou carved his way through and started putting the pressure on Terry Wyhoon. Teb using all the curb, and Voigt and Hansen continued their little war. Great to see the ex-Gary Rogers Motorsport car right in the thick of the action, with the former sports sedan racer in Voigt doing a good job. Meanwhile, it was on for the lead, and Evangelou didn't take long to work his way back to the front.
Teb out onto the front straight, manages to take that successful passing manoeuvre in towards the first corner, comes out the other side, one position better.
Yeah, did a good job on Shepherd there. And the start finished straight, just down towards turn one. Real textbook passing manoeuvre. There's Waihoon. Meanwhile, Voigt had problems. He hit the pit lane. And the Voigt contracting VY Commodore. Dramas, which was a shame because he was running very, very well in race one and also in this race in that battle he was having with Matt Hansen. There was no catching Evangelou though. He might have already wrapped up the series. But he was looking for another clean sweep to end his season on a real high. Terry Waihoon pressed him hard and set the fastest lap of the race just towards the end, but couldn't chase down the rampant Victorian who took 2 from 2 in the Shannons V8 touring cars. So looking for a good race in the finale is Terry Waihoon. He finished second in race 2. Sean Fennell on debut on the podium. Awesome job in the Power Plus Commodore. Set for a start. Final race in the growing category that is the Shannons V8 touring cars. We're away. Evangelou struggling to get that car off the line.
Initially looked like he had 2 bites of it. I thought it was going to be a complete disaster, but he's recovered here. Hansen, it appears to be down the outside from the second row. How's this going to end on the exit at turn 1? Evangelou's got the line.
He got a good run, didn't he? But Evangelou's in the ideal position to hold on to the race lead, where he's been all weekend long, and just squeezes Hansen out of that position into the right-left sequence at turns 2 and 3.
Big slide there on the exit of the chicane for Waihoon as he tries to put the power down.
Ambrosio there in the car that he shared with Dean Kovacevic all season long out of Perth. They come a long way to go racing in the Shannons V8 touring cars. Waihoon nowhere in this race, looking to work his way through a really slow start and looking to make up a lot of ground.
Evangelou's established a pretty comfortable lead on this opening lap. The best part of 6 or 7 car lengths. Voigt down the inside of Hansen using a heap of track. You'd have to say using track that wasn't even there as he jumped the curb, but I think he successfully managed to take that position.
He'll get an angry letter from the Melbourne Racing Club who look after this facility, and it is in pristine condition. Not so much for some of these cars if they get closer. 3 wide into the final sequence of corners. John Vigotis right in the thick of the action, as to Matt Hansen in the 5 car. And the Image Racing Best Western car from Shepparton. Shepherd right in the thick of it too.
And it almost looks like the opening lap as they head down towards turn 1 for the second time. Still a whole bunch of cars here fighting for position, and all the way back to 8th place. I think they're all chasing this final spot on the podium.
Teb in there with a new front bar on his Commodore. So he's rebounded from damage in race 1. Just a battle of the AU Falcons, isn't it? Leader goes through. There's Voigt, and then a gap back to Vigotis, Shepherd, Hansen, and now Waihoon, who's starting to fly in the Image Racing BA.
These are a very heavy car, and it's going to take a couple of laps to get the tyres up to ideal operating temperature. So we can see off some of these tighter corners, drivers really struggling for traction. With Waihoon now over the top, one of the fastest parts of the circuit, and trying to pull it up deep under brakes into Dandenong Road, this tight left-hander. Manages to make a bit of ground on Hansen, I believe, in front of him. Now going to look up the inside towards the final chicane. Well executed so far.
Curb on the inside, bounces it off 2 wheels. There's one position. Vigotis has run very wide in front of him, used all of the curb and then some of the grass as well, and I think Waihoon can capitalise here.
It's an exciting couple of corners there for the 49 car, making up 2 positions in quick succession. He'll be very happy.
Good move, and Waihoon gets a couple more. Teb now looking down the inside of Hansen. So Matty Hansen's got the short back and sides up and down the leaderboard like a yo-yo in the last lap and a half. Another of the contingent from WA's car, based in Wagga Wagga actually, but travels all the way over from Perth to go racing at each round of the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series.
Still this line of cars from 3rd to 8th place fighting for the same position. Evangelou has absolutely checked out, disappeared down the road. Voigt's working in his own clear bit of track there in 2nd.
And just behind this pack is the newbie this weekend, Sean Fennell, in his first ever car race, up behind Ambrosio in the ex-Perkins Motorsport car, who was having a fairly substantial lock-up of a unloaded Kumo tyre on the inside at Dandenong Road. And looks like a pass going on there as well. Great effort by Vigotis to get his car back out on the racetrack. A lot of damage. And the two protagonists that came together in race 1 earlier in the morning, nose to tail on the racetrack as we ride with Evangelou.
Let's have a listen to the cars through this tight chicane. Very, very smooth and considerate on his throttle application. You've got to be decisive, you've got to get the power down, but aggression usually doesn't work, so he's opening up that throttle, really trying to dial it in as best he can to get the power to the ground.
So Waihoon has cleared Shepherd, his teammate. Those two cars prepared out of the Image Racing stable. That is Terry Waihoon's outfit. Great team. They prepare a lot of cars, in fact upwards of 2 or 3 cars at some rounds in the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. Back to this battle. Fennell up the inside, fastest point of the racetrack on Ambrosio, and gets it done. Nice move.
It's a brave place to put your car over 250 kilometres an hour across the top there to dive up the inside of Ambrosio. I bet you they were both holding on for dear life at that point.
This is the Power Plus 98 car. Steve Owen has raced that car a couple of times in the Shannons V8 Touring Car National Series. Man on the podium at Mount Panorama just a few weeks ago. Back on board with Waihoon.
He's managed to make his way up to 3rd position. He's chasing down Voigt here in front of him. The approach to turn 1 a little bit bumpy, spending a long time on the brakes as you try and pull the car up for that tight left-hander.
V8 Touring Car National Series run a control ECU that limits the revs to 7,000. They use a controlled Kumho tyre and a couple of other little control components. Frank Lowndes has been heavily involved in the technical side of this category and making sure it's all been policed. Here's a dice. Vigotis and Tebb, they've been at it since lap 1 of race 1 when they both ended up with pretty severe damage, and they continue to swap positions now in the final race of the year.
I think Vigotis tried to muscle his way a little bit through there and gave Tebb a friendly touch on the apex of that corner. Fortunately, they both kept it straight. Tebb got a good run off the turn and led the way all the way up the back straight. Looking back now at Voigt and Waihoon.
2nd place, and Voigt starting to drive defensively in the Gary Rogers Motorsport Commodore. This is the car that Cam McConville won at Winton in all those years ago when he passed on the very last lap of the race to win in the final few corners in difficult conditions. So it's a pretty well-known car, and great to see them being presented in their original livery. Here goes Waihoon. Pretty textbook overtaking manoeuvre, that one.
Indeed, bridged the gap to Voigt. He had the best part of 100 metres of track between them a couple of laps ago. Managed to clear that gap and then successfully overtake into 2nd position.
Matt Hansen having a great weekend. Tebb running very, very wide, and that's going to allow Vigotis to buy into that position. In fact, he goes right round the long way into the right-hand corner, then bounces the car hard off the curb. Hansen in there as well. Tebb looking just a little bit ragged at turn 1, and it's cost him momentum, and also at 4 might cost him power down on this long back straight. So great battle pack. Just hovering in behind them is the ex-Perkins Motorsport Jack Daniels car. Izzy Ambrosio shares it with Dean Kovacevic all season long. Mentioned before the long trek from Perth to go racing.
Vigotis now, having applied pressure for the last few laps to the back of Tebb's car, has got clear track in front of him. He'll be hoping to really put his head down and establish a bit of space between those two cars.
Mark Shepherd out in front of them, the Warby Lodge Image Racing AU. And this category is such a great place for old V8 supercars to find a home and to get them on the racetrack. We had some really good fields early in the year, a solid field this weekend. We should mention, in fact, Chris Delsma, the Century 21 car, unfortunately unable to take the start after blowing an engine in qualifying. Dropped a conrod in that, I'm told. So really unfortunate for Chris, who absolutely loves this place. Had a lot of success here in production car racing, and very, very keen to run here in his AU, the ex-Howard racing car, and really coming to grips with his V8 touring car debut. Just a couple of rounds under his belt. He'll be back bigger and better in 2011. So will many of these competitors, and some new cars coming on stream as well. Some new competitors shaping up to get involved in this growing series. Here we go again. Tebb versus Vigotis, side by side to the top of the hill.
That's two moves in the same race at that very, very fast bit of road. Vigoda's locked the inside wheel on the way onto the back straight down at turn 4, and that ultimately affected his run all the way up the hill. Teb making the most of it at the top.
And a carbon copy just behind them as well, with Matt Hansen going the long way around Sean Fennell in the VX, the Power Plus car.
These two all over each other. Vigoda's trying to look up the inside onto the final corner. Teb trying to put the power down out on that concrete curb. Never a lot of grip right out there.
Hansen had a massive moment behind them as well, and that'll leave him open to attack from Fennell, and Ambrosio fighting his way into this one as well. So battles left, right and centre in the Shannons V8 touring cars. Vigoda's curb, he got it up on two wheels.
He's approaching from a very narrow line into that first corner, and I dare say on the last lap he was very defensive into that first corner, and it really allowed Teb to close the gap, and he's pushing up the inside here. Teb would have just seen the nose at the very last moment. Gracefully allowed him a bit of space, graciously as well as gracefully.
Well, it was gracefully, wasn't he? Just left enough room. It's not if you can say a V8 touring car is graceful, but I think that's a fair example of that. Now Hansen's dropped back, and dramas for Fennell too. So the rookie's starring role in this race comes to an end. His car slowing up the back chute.
Teb now trying to pull it up. Vigoda's all over him. These two are really having a ding-dong battle here. It's been going on now for the best part of 6 laps, and neither of them are willing to give up. Space up the inside, definitely not. They're using all of the curbs again.
Oh, two wheels! Vigodas, he's lost it, he's gone round. Off to the infield, and John Vigodas has thrown away a potential podium. Too much curb on the inside, loses the car, and around he goes.
Definitely too much curb. You could see it just bounced the car very high, and with an unloaded vehicle he's tried to get on the gas nice and early, and unfortunately it's ended in a spin. Have a look at it. Oh, very, very high. Lots of air under the inside of the car. He's on the power as early as possible, still to try and make the move, and results in a spin.
Well, it was Teb into Vigodas in race 1. It was almost Vigodas into Teb in race 3. What a weekend those two have had. And what a shame for Vigodas. He's been so good, so fast here this weekend. So too this man, Tony Evangelou. What a season it's been. He racked up the championship coming into this round. And just to put an exclamation point on his brilliant 2010 season, it becomes 3 from 3 at Sandown for the local boy, the champion and the final round winner as well in the Shannons V8 touring cars. Voigt was 3rd, Shepherd, Teb, Hansen, Ambrosio, and John Vigodas crept across the line in 8th place after a busy day out.
Tony Evangelou, congratulations. Season's over. It's all done and dusted. Champion.
Yeah, no, it feels good. I won one in 2001. I was lucky enough, so honestly didn't think I'd be standing here winning another one. So no, it's been a really good season, been consistent. So yeah, got rewarded at the end for it.
Terry Wyhoon, interesting year. Missed a couple of rounds, but it might have been a little bit different championship points-wise had you completed the day like you did today.
Yeah, that's true, Sean. That's what Gary just pointed out as well. It's the second time in a row that we've been runner-up. But you're quite right, you've got to do them well. We were going to run Bathurst this year in another series, so we opted to miss Eastern Creek for it, and that didn't eventuate, so thought we'd come back this weekend and lucky enough to win the event.
So after an eventful day at Sandown Raceway, these are the final points after a great season for the Shannons V8 touring cars. Our champion is Evangelou, but some big names right in the thick of the action.
Coming up after the break, we look back on highlights from round 2 of the 2011 Motorsport Australia Off-Road Championship, the Tatsfink Desert Race.